Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Cool Table. Today we are in the cut with Amai Kuda et Les Bois. I feel like I do a horrible job of saying that every time, but my French should come in handy at that point. Thank y'all for really being on the show today. It's like y'all kind of met me at the perfect time, so to speak, because no word of a lie, the past maybe 3 weeks, I've only been listening to Sade. Like that's just it. And so when new music comes out, it's like, I don't know if you're fitting into my vibe right now. I'm listening to one artist all the time. But clearly that wasn't the case here. The project is called EmUrgency, and it spells a little bit differently. Can you tell us about kind of the name of the project and how that kind of fits into what's going on right now?
Well, it's one of those things where like I had the collection of songs and I didn't have a name for it. And then I guess that came to me because for me, there's like urgency in it, you know? It's like it's an emergency. There's urgency in it for me personally just to get this work out, to express what I need to express. But also like the themes that I'm dealing with has a lot to do with like coming into my own as an artist, as a person who works with African spiritual traditional practices, um, as a community organizer, and sort of like all these things that I think I've struggled with for more than 10 years, kind of owning it, being confident in these areas, and kind of just coming into a place where I'm like a bit more able to sort of stand in my power, as it were. Like we all have our own power, we all have our gifts, we all have our superpower, as it were. And I think there's a lot in life that happens that kind of can make us feel like unsure about whether we have a right to do something. Do we have a right to say something? Do we have a right to be who we are, to
Mm-hmm.
be like, I'm a little bit different, lots of people are different, but I'm a little bit different. Can I feel confident to walk with that, like, and to just be me? So that's the story of like the songs, the themes I'm dealing with. It's like really owning and being proud of myself as a person of African descent who's reclaiming my spiritual traditions. Can I be um proud of myself as a singer? Like I'm always like just so focused on all the imperfections and stuff that I do, but I'm like, you know what, it's I have to just like, I'm good enough. It's okay, it's okay. What I do is good enough. And anyway, so all that, so basically that's it's coming into confidence, which I think is it's I don't think I'm the only one who deals with that journey, right? Like a lot of us are just like journey of self-healing is about learning to love yourself and all that, right? So it's nothing that's so different from anybody else. It's very much a universal thing. But this is my process of like coming out, right? I'm queer. It's like I'm coming out in that. I did that coming out ages ago, but it's more like coming out as a sangoma, as a person who does healing work, coming out as like I do work in my community, and that involves some leadership. So it's okay to take the lead. It's not like a bad thing, like, all those things. I hope I'm explaining it clearly, but for me, that's what I was emerging into. That's what I am emerging into. It's like an ongoing process, right? Like we're all the chrysalis, like coming out of the butterfly emerging, right? And we're all doing that for ourselves in our own ways. And this is that for me. This album is all about that. So the title kind of fit with that, and it's a need. It's like I feel, it's like as much as somebody needs like water or air. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I need to get this out of me. I need to do me, to be me, to live, same as all of us. We all need to live our truth. Otherwise we're stifling, and it's a kind of like spiritual choking. So
It's crazy that you ended off by talking about that because I want to talk about the fact that urgency is an emergency, and those are two words that we usually don't always put together, at least when we're talking about our daily lives. And then
mm-hmm.
Wednesday wisdom might as well be canceled. How much gems you just dropped to start the show off? We don't even know to go to Wednesday wisdom at the end. Everyone got their daily dose of Wednesday wisdom in the
Thank
first two
you.
minutes. And I want to give a shout out to Eva Chimneys who's bringing us the ice cream. Shout out to Kristen and Em over there.
Thank you.
Yeah, big shout out to them for bringing the ice cream for us every single time. Let's talk about urgency really quickly. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something when you're coming into your own in that way, where you're like, it's okay to be me and do what I do and be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
There's a urgency comes into your life that using the word urgency I think is interesting because things are kind of moving more slow for you when you come into yourself. You're more calm, you feel more level headed, but urgency still seems like it fits completely. So can you kind of explain that? Because as you explain all that, I was thinking of the word urgency, kind of the whole time you were talking, and then towards the end for you to kind of talk about that part of it, I thought was perfect.
Yeah, like I think you're right. It is a process, like you said, like there's all this growth is like an internal process that's
Mm-hmm.
slow. It's like moving of tectonic plates. Like it's something that you can't even see it, but it's changing. So you're right. But then I think if you, I think if there's things building underneath for a long time, then there's a pressure builds up, right? And it's just like
Mm-hmm.
it needs to get out. And so that's where the urgency is. That's where it's like there's already been these slow shifts happening in me for, like I said, like 10 years. Um, and I think that like a lot of people, it's like the person who say, if I'm going to compare it to, I use coming out, the sort of metaphor of coming out. Like I say, as somebody who's queer and has been hiding it for all that time, right? Like they may have taken them like years to realize who they are, and then by the end, it's just like, no, I need to. It's like you're busting out, like,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's urgent. Like it's almost, for me, I feel like it's almost part of my survival in terms of being able to do some of the things that I need to do, and like more than just the emotional urgency of it. Like sometimes, like I work with spirits, I work with my ancestors, and sometimes they're telling me like, no, you need to, like there's certain things they'll be telling me to do, and I may not be paying attention or listening because I'm like, it's kind of the colonized brain where I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll give an example. I'll just go straight into it. Like I'm gonna be super honest. Like for instance, wearing this crown. I've taken a long time. Like they told me to wear this from time, and I'm like, why am I gonna walk around wearing a crown? Like I'm gonna look bonkers. I'm gonna look like I think I'm some kind of queen or something like that.
Yeah.
I felt like all this self-consciousness, and then it's like I kind of learned. I began understanding a little bit more how um, it's about protection, actually. Like the symbolism of the crown. One, it's divine connection. It helps you to connect to like source power.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's also protection. Like it's not just the circle which unites things and helps your energy to stay in flow, but it's also these things that go up that are like, it's like a static has its horns. Things have their spiritual protections to kind of keep energies away that would try to harm you. So it's not about being like, oh, I'm better than people. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm queen this, I'm princess that. It's about there's reasons why. And for whatever reason, this is what I'm called to do for
Mm-hmm.
by those people. And whether I understand it or not, they're like, no, you need to be doing this because otherwise you might be being attacked by things that you're not even aware of. So that may sound crazy to some people, but for me, it's like learning to shift out of that colonized mind where it's like judging all these things that I'm being told,
Mm-hmm.
and just accept that, one, to trust and trust in my ancestors because they got my back. And there's
Exactly.
and yeah, if I usually, like, I won't understand why they've told me to do something, but then if I
Mm-hmm.
take time to, like, years later sometimes, or sometimes it's just months, I'll begin to understand the wisdom of it, right? So maybe I can't see it right now. It's like I'm their child, and like your mom tells you, like, don't run across the street, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no cars coming, you know what I mean, or whatever it is, like, and you're just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you know better, but obviously there's a wisdom to it, and it's trying to trust them more, and that's part of trusting myself, because we all have millions of ancestors in us that, like, are giving us this power, this connection to the beginning of time, right? Back, as you go back through your bloodline, we all connect to the beginning of time, which is like
Mm-hmm.
the deepest, most powerful thing ever, right? We connect to source. And so, like, yeah, just to sit in that's our power. Each of us has that power, and just to sit in that and be able to listen to the call. So yeah, it is urgent. It's urgent that you listen when your grandparents or whoever, the wisdom, the wise ones in your life, your
Mm-hmm.
guides, when they tell you, like, don't do so and so or do so and so. It's urgent because it could mean life or death, literally.
And you talked about kind of trusting your guide. It's like you're walking with that for protection, so you can kind of be in the space that you need to be in. And it's like you talk about the colonized mind making you think that outside of that, and it's like I'm obviously I'm extremely happy for you because I like the project a lot. To know that you kind of went through that process, but what you say about trust, I think, is like so crucial. I think of that quote that says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate; it's that we are powerful beyond measure." And it's like, the power of you without the crown is not going to be the power of you with the crown. And so it's like I really like really love to hear that. I want to talk about making this album during this Panzerati. Um, we've all been home for how long? Like we've all been home for how long? We talked about it earlier. What is a day anymore? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and the craziest part, I found out that some provinces can opt out of daylight savings time. Did you guys know that?
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Since
And I
like
said, you know what? Let's opt out of weekdays too, because clearly those don't exist anymore. That's the kind of time we're living in. So
yeah.
putting out this music that's kind of reflecting what's going on inside, you do what you're doing it, and kind of something we haven't experienced before. You know, some experiencing feelings you haven't experienced before while experiencing, you know, things in the physical world you've experienced before, has to be a crazy experience. So tell me about what it was like, you know, putting the album together, but also thinking about how it's gonna be promoted during quarantine.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would love to get Kuda's thoughts on it. I'll just say, I mean, like when we went to recording, you know, we had the masks on and stuff like that for a while, but then eventually, I don't know. I'm gonna hand it over to you because I've been talking for a bit. What are your thoughts on creating during quarantine? Putting on the spot too much?
I suppose it's kind of easier almost to you have more time. You have more time to do things. That's why at least I have more time. School is a little bit more of a non-issue during quarantine. You don't have to go. You can just do it from home. And so just having something to focus on, it made it a little bit easier both to have something to focus on through quarantine, but to also have quarantine so that I could focus on something. It's kind of it's almost split, I guess. It's kind of weird though. It was kind of weird to at first to go into somebody's house, and even with the mask on, that's where the studio was. It was kind of weird. I hadn't been in somebody's house in months, more than almost a year at that point. It felt really weird to be within proximity to somebody. It's like you forget how to socialize after a certain point in time.
I feel like the music that you make in quarantine holds a different weight. What I've heard a lot from artists is, like, I've seen a lot of artists I know personally who are becoming the biggest they've ever been during quarantine. And because they said they had whatever amount of months it was when they were laid off of work or wherever to just focus on music, like you said, school's been less. And it feels like the music that they've made during quarantine has a different weight to it. Is that something that y'all felt like, you know, it had more weight to the music you were making during that time?
I think that like I echo everything that Kuda said. Like I think quarantine, it's like a kind of everyone's in hibernation, right? And that's kind of like the perfect moment you can hunker down and do your thing. And so then, yeah, I think that will give people like the focus allows you to create something that's more powerful, you know, because your mind, your energy isn't everywhere. So I think that's really, like, I agree with Kuda on that. And then in terms of that would kind of lead to what you're saying, right? The weight of the work would be different because you've just had, it's kind of crystallized in this moment of just like, yeah, it's like, you know, the child that stays in the womb for 9 months, like we're in this womb, like we're all just kind of in our houses. And so yeah, you're gonna be able to make something really powerful like that because it's just been like incubated, yeah, in a way. And I think like there's also just a lot of powerful energy. Like I think COVID is not, it's not like a coincidence. Like there's all these things that are aligned, right? COVID, and then the uprising that was sparked by George Floyd, and like George Floyd's murder. And like it's a powerful moment historically, like where humanity's been reminded that we're not in charge, number one. Like, and I will say humanity, like the colonial system has been reminded that they're not in charge really. Like they are, you know, they think they're in charge, but again, there's something bigger, more powerful. There's like these little germs, these little bacteria, these viruses. Like nature is actually bossy. Exactly. Like
laid waste.
Like sit down a minute, you know, sit down, be humble. You know, like it's kind of like we all have to remember that fact that we're not running the show here. So that's, for me, that's a powerful thing that like humanity's going through, or this society is going through, this kind of, hopefully those of us who will take the message. I think some people kind of, you know, they're just trying to get back to business as usual and they just want to, you know, use it to their advantage, et cetera, et cetera. But I think those of us, a lot of people are like, oh shoot, like this is a moment. There's something, I'm experiencing history here. And it's a moment you're at like a juncture where you have to figure out like, okay, are we going to actually continue doing things the way we've always been doing them? Or are we going to do things differently? So that's humanity. And then similarly, I'm going through that, like I think in a lot of people's personal lives, it's like the same thing. Are you gonna, now's the moment, you can't go on with work in the same way. So what are you gonna do differently? Like, you know, life is forcing you to do things differently, to make those big changes that maybe you've wanted to do for years. So it's like the music is coming out of that. Like
time to pick up that instrument you always wanted to learn and spend more time just going outside by yourself or just doing things and creating in a way that you couldn't do tomorrow before because of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think especially the people I've seen, I think how you look at time has to, if how you look at time has not changed during the pandemic, then I think that says a lot about you know, your mental space, because you said it right there before. You said you didn't have the time, and the 24 hours in the day, you know, existed before you know this pandemic happened. So when it's like you think about what you were, and personally, so I graduated school early, and I finished right before the pandemic happened. I finished in February. Usually we finish in April, so I had a little bit of time just kind of not to be in school. And I think thinking about this stuff in terms of what am I going to do with my time I've spent the past how many years with all these 18-hour days doing all these things, and now I have all this time, and that's kind of where the pandemic has left us. And I think that music has been the lasting thing more than anything. I talked about earlier, I've listened to Sade for weeks. Sade hasn't put out music in, you know, how long, and it's like the music is going to last in that way. And I think this project has some of that value where you know, it will feel great in the time, but putting this on 15 years from now, you know, it has that timeless feel. Like putting this on 15 years from now, you know, you encapsulated kind of that coming out that you talked about earlier, and anyone going through that, you know, time from now will be able to kind of feel that through the music. The prayer to start the project. I've seen a lot of people online talk bad about, you know, prayers to start project. I think that is absolute nonsense. I thought that set the tone perfectly. You know, the amount of times I've listened to the project, I forget that that's going to be at the beginning, but I appreciate it. I'm like, okay, ready. This got me right. I'm ready to head in. Talk about the importance of putting that at the beginning and kind of why you chose that.
I guess it goes back to what, I've done that always for all my albums. I start with a prayer, and all my, like if I perform, I also start with pouring libation and honoring, like calling ancestors, because like I came to this work, like I came to music, like I was a kid and I loved singing and stuff. And then went in a different direction. Like I got more focused on like social justice work and everything. And then it was when Kuda was really little, like less than 6 months. Like it was a spiritual message. It was my ancestors who told me, like, sing, like that's what you're supposed to do. And so like for me, that's the beginning. That's the beginning of us all, right? And so it's just honoring that. Like I'm not, anytime I'm on stage or anytime I'm trying to start something, I have to remember them first. You know what I mean? It's like we start with the beginning. You don't start with, it's not me that came first, like they came before me. So I have to, it's almost like the kind of, it's an honoring, it's a sort of seeking permission, you know, before you just go ahead with something. Grounding, because like again, like what I do that, is it actually a way for me to, part of it was a way for me to overcome a lot of anxiety. You know, a lot of people, like they take their drink before the show, or they whatchamacallit, when you smoke, whatever, you know, you have your tools, nothing wrong with that, those are all medicines. But like for me, that was my medicine, was to pray, to call the spirits. And so that became the tradition in the shows and the live shows. And so it was natural for me, I'm trying to, in some ways, I mean, you're not recreating the live experience, but in a way you are. Like a live show is like a journey, right? You start together and then you move through it.
If you one more time say something that I'm thinking, we're gonna have a problem. I'm actually getting tired of it. I'm actually getting tired of it. My next question was gonna be about how the album is a journey. Finish what you're gonna say, but I'm tired of it.
That's awesome. Well, that's it. You know, it's like we got to start the journey. You got to start the journey of the recorded experience, like kind of similar to how we do with the live thing. You know, we come in, we honor the spirits, we ground ourselves all together, right, in that prayer, and then we move through it and see where it takes us. And then I don't always do this with the live show, but actually a friend of mine years ago told me you should end with it, the prayer too. And so I try to do that now when I can, because I think it's also, again, it's the grounding. You close off the circle, right? You gotta remember them at the crucial minutes, at the crucial times, at your beginnings and your endings. So that's why. But to ask me more about the journey. Let's talk about the journey.
The album really is a journey. Like it feels like we're going with you. We're feeling what you're feeling or trying to overcome what you're trying to overcome. So I think it's preparation and preparing someone to start something. People always say that the most important step is the first one. Like, preparing for us for the journey, I think is almost as important as the journey itself, because what you come into that thinking, where your mind is at, is going to kind of affect how you feel about it. You had this line on Love Song, and anyone who knows me knows I love love. So
Okay.
I really liked this line, and you said, all of that won't mean a thing unless you return the feeling. Talk to me about that.
Oh boy. Yeah, I guess Love Song, I laugh as soon as you mention Love Song, because I always have like one song on an album that's like, not always, but yeah, many of them that is about romantic love, right? Like the rest of the album is like all spiritual and political and stuff.
That's why it stands out. I was like, oh, somebody in love here.
And it's the part of me that I'm like, sometimes I try and like push it aside, but it's like, no, that's a big part of all of our lives, right? Mm-hmm. Like romantic love and feelings, wherever it goes, if it's successful or unsuccessful, like just that little, yeah, it's part of the human condition, like falling in love and whatever that entails. And so that's what the song is dealing with, that. But for me, it's like comparable, to a previous song I have called Disappointment, which is about like unrequited love, right? Or it was an unrequited crush. This one was about a deeper relationship, but I guess the point is like, when, I think relationships, it's all about reciprocity, right? And then I think one of the challenges, what makes it hard, is sometimes, like, even if two people love each other, like, it's not always simple. You're not always speaking, like, as they call it now, the same love language. You're not always like, both people don't necessarily know how to communicate in the same way. And so that, like, that reciprocity, that passing back and forth of the love can become challenged just by the whatever it is, the way you do things. And so that's what I mean. It's not that actually the person didn't return the feelings, it's the person didn't know how to like show the feelings, in a way that for me would make me feel loved. So anyways, that's what that line is literally about. But I think the song overall is like dealing with, somebody who's kind of part of these relationships, are sometimes like part of your destiny, right? Like whether it's just to grow through the challenge that it poses for you, or for whatever reason, like each relationship that we have, whether it's a romantic one or a not romantic one, I think a lot of wise people have said it's there to teach you something. And so that is a big part of your destiny. Like human we're here for relationships, we're here to relate to each other and go through that. Like we're not all this like a sort of just spiritual entity unto ourselves. Like we're here to go through that challenge of trying to be able to communicate with each other, understand each other, and go through all that drama, which it really is a lot of drama, really, most of the time. Like a lot of times in life, I'm like, man, my life is always simpler when I'm not in a relationship. It's like, it's smooth, and then as soon as the relationship comes in, it's just like drama. But like, that's what we're here for. That's the challenge. That's the lesson. So yeah, so I'm here for it. In that song, it's like, I wrote it from the point of like, I was out of the extreme heartbreak and frustration and into a more like, at peace. Like, it's cool. I know this was, all this happened for a reason, and we're gonna see how it plays out. And I'm cool. I feel cool now. I can write a lighthearted song about it now.
Yeah. It's not gonna burst into tears. I feel that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I thought it was so interesting how it's like, again, it stood out so much because it's like the one song that's like that. And yeah. It's funny you saying like sometimes you don't want to put stuff like that on there, but it's like reluctantly it is a part of all of us. I'm very much the same way. Even though like I have a girlfriend now, I most of the time in committed relationships, I'm still like, don't fall in love with nobody, don't do it. I'm like, listen, it's great, but it might not be like, So I totally feel you on that one. Which way? When that came on just in the first like minute or so, I was like, this song has a gangster feel to it. I felt I felt like I was on The Wire or Snowfall, walking around like this, like.
And it's the first song on the album, right? Yeah. I feel like that kind of contributes to the fact that it's a journey, that you start out with like a song named "Which Way." It's like, where am I on this map? I'm looking for a path. What's going on?
Yeah, most definitely. And then so that's the kind of vibe it gave me. Then when I heard the verse at the end, I said, "Oh yeah, this definitely has that feeling." Like, let's talk about which part that is on the journey. And I feel like "Which Way" is one of the songs where it's almost like you start somewhere, and again you're wondering which way, where am I going? But by the end of the song, you've almost answered the question. And not all the songs are like that. So talk about that.
Started your course.
Yeah, Kuda said you've charted your course. That's I guess the song itself is a journey from like that moment of the moments of confusion and frustration at like not knowing what to do, and again that's life, right? Like it's like trying to figure out how to navigate, you know, trying to find our compass, as it were, like how to determine, is this the right thing for me? Is this my path or is it not my path? And what are the methods we use? Like some people will use the pros and cons, and it's all in the head. And I think that's kind of how we're in this society. We're kind of taught like everything should be able to be logical and visible to the human eye, and like you can sort of see what the possibilities are, and then make a decision logically. Whereas I think, you know, a lot of people might also say, hey, you know, your gut instinct plays an important role. And that's not something you can boil down to logic, why something just doesn't feel right? Like it's just so much more beyond that. It's just so much, bigger than that, or more intangible. And then for me as a person who does spiritual work, it's actually like our traditions, like in every ancient spiritual tradition, there's like systems of divination. And that's meant to help you through those moments, like which way do you go? And you have to, at those moments, you know, it's prayer, it's whatever. It's a way to, how do we connect to the source energy, whether it's in you or beyond you or both at the same time? How do you connect to that to navigate? And so I kind of made the comparison between the compass. Like the compass is actually like literal physical compasses they don't work with the Earth's magnetic energy. And the same as like, I think our inner compass, at least for myself, I don't think we can be grounded and know which way to go unless we are literally physically grounded, connected to the Earth's energy. That's my experience. And I think sometimes we forget that we're animals and we need that. There's actually this thing, I saw this little video of these foxes, I think it's Arctic foxes that they literally, like, they're in the snow, right? There's like pure snow all around them, and they have to try and like find under the snow these little animals that they're hunting. But how, you know, where do they know where they can't dig up the whole snow? And so literally these foxes, they sort of like spring up into the air and land down on a random spot of snow to catch this animal, because they're like listening and feeling for where the animal is. Apparently, when they're faced due north, they're like 90% accurate. If they're not faced due north, their accuracy is way off. And so it's like, again, it's that alignment. It's like the alignment to the Earth's energy allows you to succeed in what you're doing, to work with this kind of deep force inside that's pulling you in the right direction. So yeah, for me, that song is all about struggling to find that, to reconnect to that, because I think all this concrete and all this stuff, like life, history, colonization, has tried to separate us from that magnetic pull. So that's my story of it. But I think that when you said that the song was gangster and like just like the vibe on it, like I want to hear Kuda's take on it, because I think that it was a cool process, like hearing his young person, like the energy that he brought into it.
That's my favorite song of all the ones that I worked on.
Okay.
He co-produced, so yeah.
What do you want to know?
I talked about the themes and but like let's talk
about the vibe of the song, because I think like I do a podcast where I review albums, and a lot of times people will like a song not knowing the context of it, not even really knowing what the person is talking about. So that's why I like this song, because again, stuff could be going over people's heads. You know how people are today. There's no guarantee they're gonna understand everything you just explained, but it still has that vibe to it. So let's talk about that, because I think the vibe itself, it makes it to the song like almost a perfect song to me, because you can tell the story two ways. You can tell the story for those who don't understand the words and for those who do. So let's talk about that part.
But good question.
I didn't really have much to do with the writing of like the actual words, but when it comes to the or anything to do, but when it comes to the, I suppose, the backing track, the ensemble, the ambiance, I was inspired a bit by like 50% alt rock and 50% hip hop.
Okay.
And so I kind of tried to get this middle ground of sort of like a, for lack of a better word, like a dark and driving feel of somebody who's like, I always, whenever I hear the song, even when my mom used to play it without any produce, I used to imagine being like on a first person on a path lost in the woods. And so I kind of used that. The first thing I came up with was the bass line. It's like a really, really low, just really simple. And then I built off of that with the drums, and then I put some like some synth ambience on it to really capture the image that I had in my head of that just like nighttime in a forest where you're trying to find, like, you're off the path, you're trying to get your way back to it. I guess that's kind of how I thought of it with the vibe. Yeah.
No, I think it fits, man, and I think that's like, you know, with someone who makes music like you do, with the themes that you have in your music, like personally, that scares me, because I'm like, people just aren't smart out here, and and it just terrifies me that you know, that like someone's gonna be like, oh, this is my favorite song, which way? And I'll be like, oh, why do you like it? And then I'd be like, sounds cool, and I'm like, so it is like really beautiful to see like a mixture of both, where that story can be told no matter the level of intelligence of whoever's listening to it. So
I'm just throwing shade.
Yeah.
You know those books like
the
X for Dummies, the ones that they sell? Like,
yeah. Songs for dummies. No,
literally,
I think that's jokes. I mean, I think you're totally right. And, you know, I won't go to this. I agree with you. Not everybody is like fully like, you know, analyzing songs, but also I think that it's, you know, I think it comes back to sort of what we were talking about before in terms of like working from the different places. It's like the conscious mind versus the subconscious, or the spirit, in the sense that like, and that's partly the journey to work through music, because my goal in life is like, okay, I want to do something to make the world a better place, right? I'm like, I think we should all be trying to figure out a way to make this world a better place, because it's, you know, there's a lot to improve. So I was like, oh, I need to work on social justice, I don't have time for music. But it was kind of, the awakening was to realize that that you can actually reach people, not through their conscious mind, not through being like, let's debate like racism and anti-oppression, but through like literally, like, again, the intangible, right? The energy of the song, like those, you know, taking people into that forest. And my hope, my belief, I have to have faith that, like, even without realizing it, that can be giving something to a person, whether it's the hope that they need or just something that can be shifting something subconsciously in their experience, or something even just in the world. Like, I have to believe that. I think that not everybody understood, not to compare myself, I'm not comparing myself to Bob Marley, but as an example, like what he did, right? Like, he was, as somebody who was dealing with political stuff, but at the same time, he spoke a language that was universal, right? He's talking love, and so I think what that did is open more people up to what he was like, to some of the deeper messages. But not everybody's gonna get it. Yeah. I get so frustrated that people misunderstand Buffalo Soldier. I'm so vexed about that. Let me just say, because he's not celebrating, like, Buffalo Soldiers were Black people who were hired to kill Indigenous people. He's not celebrating that. He's talking about the ironies of the fact that we are, as Black people, now tied up in somebody else's colonization, and how that. And so he says, like, how I come to. Then you could understand. I can't quote the lyrics right now, but if you listen to the lyrics, you can hear these literally grappling with that contradiction.
Exactly.
So again, not everyone's gonna catch that, but I hope that, I think if there's something deeper, then maybe it's still able to shift something. I think it absolutely. Bob Marley has changed the world. Like that's revolution. Like
exactly, literally.
Yeah.
I'm taking a course right now, as you know, and what I've learned through it, a music history course sort of, and what I've learned through it is that every social movement of the past 100 or so years has had songs that sort of drove the movement to the front of the public eye, right? Because no matter where you are in the world, what you do, what you believe in. There's one thing that I think is universal, and that's music. Always, 100% of the time, right? That's part of the power of like even what's it called? I suppose more of the technical music theory is that it's a language that can be understood almost anywhere if you're taught it, right? But taking it out of theory, just music speaks directly to people. So even like if you look at like the civil rights movement, or F the Police by NWA, or even last year the song that won the Grammy for 2020 was I Can't Breathe by her.
Yeah.
And which became kind of like an anthem for the uprising, like you said.
Yeah, yeah, no, that music definitely plays that part in everything. Like, it's kind of the language that we can all agree on. It's honestly, it's almost as if y'all have my notes, the way y'all are leading me to whatever I want to talk about, and I'm not mad at it, but it is getting a little creepy. For sure. I saw a bunch of quotes on your page from Martin Luther and Malcolm X, and over the past year, I've been listening to a lot more Malcolm X than I did growing up. That was something. Martin Luther was very popular in my house, but Malcolm X was not. And hearing the things that he's saying, 50 odd years ago, I feel so different about it, about hearing it now. And the thing I think about often is there's no chance that someone will be saying this on TV today. And you think about how far we've come in terms of Black entertainers and Black business, and that's just not happening. And so I always when I think of that, I think of how far have we really come. But I want to ask you, what do you kind of think of when you hear some of those things today? Because what they're saying is long lasting and powerful, but it's from a complete different time when our quote unquote rights were so different. So this kind of feeling does it give you hearing some of the stuff they were saying?
That's a great question. I mean, I think I want to speak to what you said, which is that nobody would be saying that today. And I think that speaks to something really powerful, that like the oppression has just been driven underground, and like and as part of that, like they deliberately created the Black middle class, I think, in order to make enough of us comfortable that, again, it's not obvious anymore. I think they're using different tactics, like, when all Black people were enslaved, then, we're all united, we're all on the same team, right? Of course, there was still division in terms of, shadism and some people would have had their freedom and some Black people could have been overseers. Like the confusion started way back then, but then, we move out of slavery, and it's like, again, all Black people being oppressed mostly equally. But then as soon as you create like, I think that was a danger to them, because we were getting more, as a people, we were getting more powerful, raising our voices more and shifting society, right, through the civil rights movement. And so I think, the best way to undermine anything is to sort of break it up, divide it. And also, I think, to use the mind, like the confusion of the mind. So I don't want to like downplay. I don't want to diss Obama or anything. Like, I don't like leveling attacks at any one individual. But I think that, for instance, like an Obama plays a role in terms of confusing people, in the sense that, like, yeah, it is powerful to see a Black person in that role, right? And that is inspiring to lots of young children, right? At the same time, and I can't take away from that, but at the same time, he's really leading the colonial warship the same way as the white leaders before and after him. So the question, and didn't shift anything, right? Didn't shift anything deep in terms of like the numbers of Black people in prison, numbers of Black people shot. In fact, some of it was worse, And so the question for me is like, is this just all about deception? Have they just mastered the art of deceiving us and making us think things are better with the stars? We see Black people on TV doing all these things, and yeah, it looks like equality. And so I think what's more powerful than actually confusing people to think that it's like a matrix. It's like you think that everything's all right, but really it's not. Underlying it, things are still like, there are more Black people incarcerated right now in the States than the numbers of Black people that were enslaved during the height of slavery. Like, WTF? Like can we talk about that?
Yeah.
But because everything looks pretty and we've had Obama, it's a lot harder to get out there and speak like Malcolm X and say, like, talk about the devil that's in, he called white people devils. What do I think? I'm half white. I have white ancestors. By the end of his life, he would move to a more spiritual place, and it wasn't about that anymore. I think that that's the thing too. People oversimplify both Malcolm and Martin. Both of them went through shifts. Like Malcolm started in a place that was more just in a place of anger, which I think was a righteous anger, but then he got to a place that was more spiritual to see that it is about humanity, but that even though we are all a human family, like he saw what brothers of all different colors, praying to Allah together, like, and that was a powerful thing for him. Even though that's a true, that didn't take away from the fact that he could see that what the white man in America was doing was evil. It was evil. It was demonic. It is demonic. So what's the point? What am I getting at? I guess I'm just saying that like he could say those things then because the oppression was clear and in our face. But now we're just so much more confused about, it just, things look better on the surface, and then it makes it harder for us to resist.
People level of anger at things that are a lot less important because they happen to be more obvious, but they're just a lot less. I don't know, just if you think about the way people interact on the internet, the things that people get angry about, which are the things that people are silent about, it's baffling.
Like just that they get kind of distracted by smaller issues.
People get distracted by smaller things, like what a specific celebrity has said,
right?
Versus just like you said, the rates of incarceration in America. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, like we're not seeing the deeper issues. It was harder. It was easier to see the deeper issues, when we were closer to slavery and to and to segregation and all that stuff. But like this, several generations out, it's like it's just so much more confusing, and sometimes we're getting lost in the sauce, I think, in terms of like just getting lost in like these little details when it's like, but actually it's still the same thing. It's still this deep colonial agenda that's at work. And how do we get to the heart of that? How do we get to the heart of that issue? And I don't think, just my personal opinion, I don't think that any surface change can do that. I don't think any like change this law here, change the street name here. I don't think that's not what is necessary. Like this is like, we need total system change.
Total system change.
So,
talking about like it being on the surface level and the things that they focus on instead of what they should focus on. It's like, you're right. It's not common knowledge. That's the kind of word I thought of now, is like things that are going on that are not common knowledge. It's not on the top of someone's brain. It's not. And it seems as though, like, talk about the internet media is almost set up in that way, because now everyone's kind of in their own section of the internet. It's like, even at that, there was a time when, Malcolm and Martin, everyone would know what they said, who they are, when they said it. That almost doesn't exist now. And, we're not all using our platforms for the right things. There are a lot of Black people who are using their platforms for the wrong things, but even that opportunity for someone to just be heard across every single platform, doesn't exist. And I think that is like a huge, part of this, that we're not. Yeah, say it again.
The revolution will not be televised.
Revolution will not be televised is right. It's like thinking about the fact that no one would say this, trying to rack my brain over who would be the person, if you could think of anyone, who would be the person that would say this on the biggest stage or create the biggest stage to see this. And thinking about, like, I did not plan to get here, but thinking about the Oprah interview that came out a couple months back, and I said Oprah is maybe the one Black celebrity that can really get all the eyes in one place.
That's true.
When she would like, whenever she would like, whatever she wants to do, if she wants to give away an island, give away a car, whatever it is, she can get all the eyes. And I think about the things that we've kind of chosen to put all the eyes on. I think about when R. Kelly was a huge thing, and the things that we kind of choose to put all the eyes on and use our power for, it always seems like, not at all what it should be. So when we talk about no one saying that now, it kind of hurts, because just saying it is a surface thing. That alone is not going to fix anything, but to not even have that, it's kind of very, very discouraging. Last year, when after George Floyd was murdered, I had learned a lot about my dad through us talking about what happened, and I was pulled over maybe a month after, and it was 3 a.m. and it was a black police officer. And the fact that I said, at least I won't die because it's a black police officer, was wild to me in the moment. And he ended up calling more cops. And it ended up being 3 colored police officers, and the whole thing just basically turned out of hand, and it just turned into something it didn't need to be. And it made me think about kind of the hopelessness that you feel when things like that happen. Even thinking about like that for my parents as well, who had to get involved in that, and how hopeless that must feel for them. I guess like what is kind of the thing that helps you when you have that hopelessness feel when it comes to something involving either race or the system not changing? Because my situation, luckily it didn't get violent. It was disrespectful, but it luckily didn't get violent. And then luckily again, it was all police of color. But to have multiple police of color of different races still have it get disrespectful, it was a lot. So is there anything that you kind of think of when you feel that like something happens and you have that extra kind of level of hopelessness?
Yeah, I mean, so I just want to speak like also to what you said. Like that's so messed up, and it's so messed up that like as a black man, like that's standard. Like that's probably almost every other black guy you could talk to will have had some experience. Maybe not to the same level, but just some experience that is comparable. And it's just and that hasn't changed, like you said, for your dad, for your and it's not just men, but like like for your parents' generation, that they should see that like happen to their son, even though it's probably the same depending on where they were living, right? Because in the Caribbean it's a different set of oppressions. But anyways, I just want to it's just messed up that's the reality still. And I think that is why that has become so, like the George Floyd situation became such a like an emblem. It's because it's just that. I say just, I mean, he's a life, he's a human being, but like we know that there's hundreds of George Floyds, right? So it's not just about him, but it's being able to see it in that way, and something about the exact way that it played out, that it charged people, that ignited people to do something. But really, I think we have to remember that it's not about just him, obviously, and that there's still so many more people that haven't had justice, to this day. And so that can make you feel really hopeless. And I have to say that just a simple thing I do, which I mean, I don't even want to say this is, I don't recommend this to other people, but I actually have to not pay attention that much to the news, because I think that hearing all that bad news as people who care about this stuff can be really depressing. It can really be discouraging. And I think in a way, like, it's probably not unintentional to make us feel like we can't do anything. So sometimes, like, for me, the best method, like, I don't know if this is the truth for other people, but like, I'm somewhat aware of what's going on, but I also kind of have to put on these blinders just to be like, okay, what am I here to do? What am I here to do? And what's, because I can't, at this moment, I can't like stop those cops from doing that. I can't change the incarceration situation. I can't change climate change, which is affecting, Africa hugely. Like, that's another level of genocide. I can't change the genocide that's going on in Congo just so that we can all have cell phones. Like, I can't do that right now. I wish I could. A bunch of us wish we could. But I'm like, okay, what am I here to do? And so being able to sort of just really, really focus, and it's through music and it's through some of the social justice organizing that I do. Like, I have a project which maybe I could touch on after, but like in my immediate community, trying to make space for people of African descent to relearn our traditions, and connect to land. And so that is, I guess that circles back to like, that's what I do when I feel most hopeless, is I go back to my spirit guides, and so to make it more universal, I would say like, I would say remembering where we're from, our ancestors, to me, that is the way that I get through, because I've had situations that make me feel like there's no point in continuing, either in the individual sense or in the broad sense. It's just like, what is the point of this? And then kind of the only way to anchor and remember that even if we don't get the point, you know what I mean? Even if we don't get the point, we are here for a reason, just to trust that and to shift the balance inside you, so that you, even if you don't know it consciously, you can feel a reason to be here. You can feel your import. You're like, I'm here because I gotta be. And and then I think even just thinking about our ancestors, that like, when we're in our hardest moments, it's like, yeah, we survived. Like our ancestors survived some shit, man. Like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but but we survived some shit. Like African ancestors, you know, things that are unimaginable. Like sometimes I'm like, wow, could I need this physical body? Could I survive that? Like, they were so strong to go through like the Middle Passage and slavery and stuff. And so I'm like, okay, they did that so that we could be here now. So I can channel some of that energy and I can overcome, like, you know, what's facing me now, which is, compared to that, it's, you know, it's not the same. Nothing, there's no comparison. So for me, that gives me strength. Yeah, we've been through something like the fires of hell, and we've come out.
Yeah,
we've come out stronger. We are literally
yeah,
like,
we've literally been through it. We've literally been through it. Before we get to our kind of quick questions at the end, and I want you to talk about your project as well. The importance of putting out a vinyl release. Like, you know, it's odd to me that people are starting to collect vinyl again, and it makes me feel old and young all at the same time. It's very, I want to show y'all some of my vinyls that I just got, and
I never heard anything on vinyl before.
we need to fix that.
So my birthday was this past January. I had a friend get me this for my birthday.
Oh, nice. Wow.
What's that?
Maxwell Black.
Maxwell on vinyl. That's a nice vinyl.
Maxwell.
And I think that the vinyl releases gives you a different feeling. Kuda, I'm almost certain you don't remember this time, but there was a thing called CDs.
I remember CDs. I remember CDs. I just don't remember vinyl.
CDs gave you a feeling when you got a new album. You were like, okay, I'm about to run this back to back to back. Now that vinyl is back popular again, it kind of gives that same feeling. But I think it's even more because you have a piece of art that you're getting that also comes with another piece of art, which is the album. So talk about that vinyl experience that you're creating by having vinyls with the project.
Yeah, like, I think it's so funny. Some of it is nostalgia, but there was something magical about that time, like the pre-internet time, the pre-digital time, where it's like I remember tapes, you got your tapes, and I'm like, I can put my tape in my pocket. Like, I'm just like, you're connecting to this like physical gem. And like, if you manage to go to a live show, you come away with it. It's just like, it's just a piece of something, and it means something to you.
I miss tapes. I forgot about tapes.
Tapes. I used to listen to audiobooks. And when it's funny, when I was a kid, I used to argue, this is when CDs were coming, and it's like, tapes are better than CDs because you could put them in your pocket. Like, that was my argument when I was like, I don't know, 10 or something.
That's a real argument. That's a real.
Phones are better than vinyl because you can put them in your pocket, right?
Wow. Now that I think that's a real argument, because I used to have that same beef because I had a friend who had a Walkman and I had a tape player. And I used to say, listen, I'm taking my tape player over your Walkman because that's definitely not fitting in your pocket. You got to hold that in your hand. I could have a fat back pocket, but my hands are free. So
hands are free.
There's
arguments.
Man.
I think like everybody knows, like, I have to confess, I don't even have my own record player right now. So like, I hope I don't sound like a traitor or something. But for me, I still, what I like about both the vinyl sound, because I remember it from when I was a kid. I used to write stories on vinyl. And like, again, there's a bunch of aesthetic things to it. And we've actually put vinyl sound. It's kind of meant to be a little bit of a, like, we're playing with the idea. We put vinyl sound on a couple of the songs, like,
which way?
Yeah, a couple of songs. It's on Which Way It's On. Listen Child, like, again, it gives a warmth. It gives a warmth that's not there with the just like the pure crisp, everything is just like, there's silence around it. And it's but having that little crackle, having that, it's again, like, warmth is something, it's more human somehow. It's more, and then same as like being able to buy the physical product, it's like, it brings you closer in this world where we're all separated right now. It somehow brings you closer to someone in a physical way, even though, I will have, possibly touched that vinyl and the person gets it, and like, we're connected in a way that's like, it's not the same as on a computer, I think, and allows you to have this physical experience that is kind of, it has don't want to go as far as to calling it sacred, but I think, you know, little things about the way we do things can make us feel differently, you know, being able to actually go through the act of putting it on the record player and, you know, hearing it, seeing it spin around. I don't know. I think there's a beauty and an art in just some of those little experiences. So wanting to give that and doing that ahead of the online release so that it kind of forces, you know, those people who are into that, or gives them a chance, and or forces people to like just engage with that for a little while, like just forget about the like, you know, forget about the digital online and all the visuals that come out that way. Just engage with this like physical experience if you want to, right? If you go out and buy it, then it's like, yeah, it's just you're having something there's only 1,000 copies, it's limited edition. So it's like, again, that used to be how it was. There's only so much of something. It wasn't just everything is everywhere, you know, like you said, the same thing is why Malcolm X, like why, you know, even if he existed today, we wouldn't hear him over the noise. We wouldn't hear him over the clamor because there's just so much of everything. So it kind of returns us back to that moment for just a second, you know, just to kind of be there.
Yeah, it's like you're giving the people a special treat. That's like a little special treat. We see this happen with people when they get a lot of money. They buy animals, whether it's Michael Jackson with his monkey, Justin Bieber with his monkey.
Michael Jackson had a monkey?
Yeah, Michael Jackson had a monkey.
Jay's monkey.
Justin Bieber had a monkey. Mike Tyson with his tiger. So when that $100 million check comes to you, what animals are y'all interested in?
I love that question.
Horse. I'm buying a horse.
There you go. So I would have to stick with horse because, you know, you got to buy your kid what he wants, right? And a horse is like also, you know, I agree with that on a because it is technically a domestic animal. You know, I'm not going to buy any like so-called exotic animal because that's just, to me, that's just extra raw, right?
Yeah.
All horses are domestic at this point, and yeah, maybe, but not very many, not in Canada, and. Yeah, and also like, sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I said no one. I think one person said horses. I like the answer a lot. I've actually used to work with horses.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not close, but I used to do a broadcast of horse racing, so I see horses a lot. And seeing horses up close, I was like, I finally get it. People falling in love with horses. Some horses look really nice, but they're huge. They are huge. Like. If you try to hit a horse with a car, the car's not making it. The horse is coming out on top. So
and they're like
a
symbol, like you said, they're like a symbol of like freedom, and you know, and actually in like from African traditional spiritual perspective, like there's the people who when you're doing like spiritual work and it's anybody, like there's people who are like, you know, they're called to that work, kind of like a priestess or like a healer, but then in fact anybody can connect to the divine through this experience of being a horse, essentially. Like there's different terms for it, but essentially it's like the ancestral spirit or the God spirit like comes on top of you, and so that's a huge part of our traditions, right? That maybe a lot of people don't necessarily know, but you know, it got translated into what we call like catching the power, right? In church, like people is like the person is not the same person. Suddenly it's like, whoa, some spirit is working through that person, right? So anyways, that's like a huge part. It's like, it's one of the, I would say, the foundational practice of any African spirituality that I know about. And so yeah, you become like the horse for that, you know, for that ancestral being for a short period of time. So for me, that the metaphor of official level, you have to say it louder.
On a more superficial level, I thought I could pretend to be a mountie.
Yeah, and then he just goes and says stuff like that, and just take away all the meaning of what I'm saying.
But I was gonna say I would choose an exotic animal though.
Okay.
So I could go with elephant because I could still ride an elephant. But like, you know, Hannibal rode an elephant into battle.
Okay.
This is why we ask questions like this.
Oh my gosh.
I think you wouldn't have enemies anymore if they knew you had an elephant, you know? It's like that's a power move.
Yeah.
And also elephants are really beautiful.
I know a couple people who have hung out with elephants. I knew this girl who used to work with elephants for like a few years. And she said they have like a warm soul to them. So I feel like that'd be good as well. This question is my favorite because sometimes I get people who they don't even know the name of the animal that they want, which is amazing. Then there's some I've never thought of. Someone said an octopus, and I said,
Oh, that's a good one.
I said that's interesting, but they're like, yeah, a huge aquarium in my place. I'm like, that's a flex. I never would have thought of that. So you always
Like,
get something like that left field. This one again can be for the both of you, and this is gonna be the last one before we hear about the project you have coming up. Is Wednesday Wisdom. Now it's hosted by our boy Brandon Gibbs. Every single week he has a new motivational quote or saying that he highlights for us. So is there anything that you kind of keep in mind that keeps you going when you're feeling a little low?
You gotta give me a second because you want it to be like kind of boiled down to a single line. Geez, Kuda, help me out here. What can we say?
What do you?
Destiny is all. Sorry, there's a TV show. I don't know if you. Oh god, now I'm giving myself away here. But I watched what's it called? It's called The Last Kingdom. Anyways, and the quote in that is "Destiny is all," and it's just really cheesy the way they say it. But anyways, that's not my quote.
You want a quote? Is what you're asking for?
Or like something like a takeaway,
Yeah.
like a quotable quote from us. Jeez. All right.
Can I just give some advice?
Advice, yes. Give us
Listen
some
to some
advice.
music.
What's that?
Listen to some music.
Listen to some music.
I like that one. I like that one.
I guess mine will be listen to the earth.
Ooh. That's one of my favorites. I like that one a lot. Listen to the earth. Oh my goodness. We always get some great Wednesday wisdoms. I'm so mad that this freaking parallelogram has us living like this because
Okay. Your names for the pandemic are my favorite.
the pandemic is not going to earn my respect. I'm not going to call it by its name.
No.
You know when people are yelling and they're having an argument, they say, "Don't call me out of my name." I'm calling pandemic out of his name every single time. But we wanted to get everyone's quotes on a board at the radio station and put them all up because Wednesday Wisdom has all these great quotes.
Nice.
Obviously, we're not together anymore, but I'm gonna have to double back and kind of get everyone's quotes and do that once things are back to normal because I feel like this Wednesday Wisdom list of quotes and to add listen to the earth and listen to music to that, just something for literally everyone, something for literally everyone. Please tell us about this project that you're working on, but what's coming up and how people can kind of either get involved or support it.
Okay, so basically it's called the Sankofa Maroon Village Project, and it's something I've been working on for a while. Basically, like in addition to music, I've always done some kind of community projects where one of the main focuses is around, like I was saying, creating spaces for people of African descent to relearn cultural knowledge. So I used to run workshops where I'd bring in like, like a babalao, which is like the priest in the West African Yoruba tradition. And I'd bring in a babalao to come and do workshops or bring in a dancer to do African traditional workshops and like not just like, we have other places where we can learn traditional stuff, but bringing it back to the spiritual knowledge because like, I think African spirituality has been more undermined and disrespected than pretty much any other spiritual traditions in the world. Like it's still taught, like people still talk about voodoo as though it's something bad, even though it's a religion, it's a world religion. So again, I think that shifting that, and a lot of people of African descent still have these negative ideas about our own tradition. So basically the focus of the work that I've done under the banner of this group called Moyo wa Africa, which means the heart of Africa, and that is referring to the spirituality, like our heart and our soul, like of our traditions, like all of our tradition, all of our cultures. The thing that holds everything together is our spiritual knowledge, right? And once that was taken away from us, it's like we lost a part of ourselves. And so, like the colonizer knew, the first thing the colonizer did when they enslaved people was to baptize and brand people. It's like taking away your spiritual anchor, your spiritual core that's the best way to disempower somebody. So for me, this group that I work with, like the focus is on that. Like, we do dance, we do music, we do all the things, but in the end, it kind of spirals back to the spiritual wisdoms and trying to reclaim those and make space for people to reclaim those. So the project right now, there's the Sankofa Maroon Village project, is about, we're actually trying to get a physical space to do that work. We used to go around and do workshops in different parts of the city and stuff, but and then basically then I was working out of somebody else's farm, a beautiful farm called the Adinkra farm, for a while, but now we're trying to get our own space, essentially, where people can, it's be like a live workspace, and essentially kind of create a bit of an intentional community, but like it's an Afrocentric intentional community, like an African village. And we're looking to do it in the sort of northwest of Toronto, and it's an area where actually there used to be a lot of Black people. That was the first place they went, one of the first places they went when they came on the Underground Railroad, and they went up there because there was not a lot of white people at the time up there, kind of around Owen Sound and Collingwood and stuff. But then they kind of, early gentrification, they got run out by racism, and so it's like kind of, this is not our land. This is Indigenous land. It's Indigenous land, but we're here, and we need a space to be ourselves, and we need space to reclaim ourselves and come into our power as people. So that's what we're working on. We're fundraising to make that space an African village. So
I really, really appreciate that. I'm happy that we got back to this, because I forgot to mention this earlier. There is a bit of I don't want to call it guilt or embarrassment, but of our own African spiritual traditions, it somehow does not look at the same way, even by us. And I don't know if you've heard the app Gaia. It's like a spiritual Netflix. There's not enough people of color on there. And when I think of that, I said, it's almost as if, we are not considering considering ourselves the experts of this, when we are. So I feel like a space like that is imperative, and something that kind of, we should be spending a lot more time even focusing on, because I think that for us to kind of treat ourselves in that way and not give, credit to that space is a different level of disrespect that I really don't like. So I really feel like, that is something that is absolutely, absolutely needed. We're going to put kind of the link to that page at the bottom of this video, and we're going to put in the description of the podcast as well. So if anyone's listening to this,
thank you.
They're going to be able to reach out, and we're going to share as well on our Instagram page, because thinking about just the fact that, as you said it, I was like, yeah, dude, we don't have those spaces. So yeah, definitely need that. I want to thank y'all for joining us. This has been an amazing conversation. I am just waiting to get my vinyl in the mail.
Coming soon.
I'm very excited to get my vinyl in the mail.
Thank you for having us.
Say it again.
Thank you for having us.
It's honestly been a pleasure. It's honestly been a pleasure. I'm excited for the project to come out. So, when this pod comes out, everyone will hopefully have heard the project by then. And then last but not least, thank you to Eva's Chimneys for the ice cream. Once again, Kristen and all the good people over there. If you're listening to the pod for the first time, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify as well. Leave us a rating, 5 stars, not a single star less. Find us on Instagram at The Cool Table Live, and on YouTube at The Cool Table Live as well. Until next time, know yourself, know your worth.
Okay. Thank you. Bless.